Hi, I'm Kerry, the host of Best of Us Investors. I've had a young gentleman by the name of Jacob Braun on my channel a couple of times, basically talking about Netlist and its position in a lawsuit against Google. He also shared with me a drug that is being developed for the cure of Alzheimer's. To give you some perspective, currently there are 5.8 million people in the United States suffering from some degree of Alzheimer's, and that number is projected to grow to 14 million or triple by 2060. So it's easy to see that if someone came up with a drug to cure or to stop Alzheimer's, you would have the next world's largest drug available to you. Jacob is going to do a video for us where he's going to give us some background on Biogen's drug and Cassava Sciences, something that he's very high on, something that he's done a lot of extensive research on, and something I want to share with you. This is the direction I want to take this channel. I don't want it to be all about Kerry and his portfolio. I want it to be about people of all ages, all varieties, all sizes, all shapes, who come on and say, I want to share some knowledge with you. I want to share some experience with you to help you make better investment decisions. So I've asked Jacob to do a video on his own. Jacob is not accustomed to doing videos. He is an author, a writer for Seeking Alpha, but he does some extensive research, and I want to share that with you. Please be aware this is Jacob's first video, but I hope it won't be his last. So this is Jacob Braun, a writer for Seeking Alpha, and he wants to tell you about Cassava Sciences, and I think you need to learn what he has to say. Now, this is not financial advice, and we need to get that out of the way, and then we'll learn from Jacob. Be right back.
Best of Us Investors presents Kerry Griegmeyer. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Braun, and I'm currently writing for Seeking Alpha, and I hope this video helps inform you about this company that I find particularly interesting called Cassava Sciences. Just to briefly go into Cassava Sciences, this company is a company that is very marred in controversy right now. So a lot of people have very strong opinions one way or the other on the company. Some people think it's going to explode. Some people think the opposite. Some people think the company is a total fraud. I haven't seen it compared to Theranos level yet, but I could see it getting to that level because some people are basically saying they're pulling the data out of thin air for their patients and the company is a total fraud. I think the truth typically lies in the middle of the two sides, and I'm going to try to navigate through the muck and kind of show you what I think of the stock. Just before we start, I want to share my screen real quick, and I want to show you the potential that an Alzheimer's drug has on a stock price. So right here, I have Biogen stock. If you remember recently, Biogen had a very controversial approval on their drug. And that was, as you can see from the chart, June of 2021. So this drug, you can look into specific controversies, but right now it's basically been decided that it's really not going to be used that widely, even though it's been approved. And some people even believe that it's going to get pulled off the market. But upon the original drug approval, Biogen's stock price was at $267 a share. Okay, so that was based on the idea that people weren't quite sure how the decision was going to go. Many people I saw actually thought the decision was going to go against the drug and there was going to be a rejection. So we take our price from 267 and we go up to 406. And so that's how much the stock price jumped on an approval. So you're thinking, what's that number? That's just meaningless. But I'm going to try to break it down for you. So right now we have a market cap of 34.6 billion on the company, as we can see right here. So I'm going to divide that by the current share price of $237. So about $237. And that equates to every dollar in share price is 0.145 billion in market cap. So what does that matter? Well, I'm going to show you how that matters. So at the time, right before the drug approval, we're going to use the stock price right here of 267. So 267 multiply 0.145 by 267, we have a value of 38.9 billion. So roughly the market cap before drug approval was 40 billion. Technically it's 38.9, but we're going to say 40 billion for simplicity's sake. So we take that 0.145 and multiply it by the price afterwards. I'm not going to use the high. I'm going to use the price right afterwards. 395. So take that, multiply by 395, and we have 57.275. So if we use our original price of 40 billion, again, these aren't precise numbers, but if we use our original number of 40 billion, that means the company added 17 billion in market cap just on approval of the drug. And remember, this was a drug that was coming into the process, very controversial. Many people weren't sure who was going to cover it, number one, because of a high cost. I believe it was said to cost $56,000 a year. The other thing was many people weren't sure about how effective it was because originally the drug was stopped in its trials, and then later was applied for after reanalyzing the data. So a very controversial drug that was approved for Alzheimer's, because the space for Alzheimer's has so few drugs and not very many very effective drugs, added $17 billion directly to the market cap of this company. So that's obviously, quite a bit. If we take Cassava Sciences here, you take right here. So our current market cap is $43 at a price of so at about $50, you have about roughly a $2 billion market cap. So if you think about this, let's say we go up to 20 billion. That means at a 20 billion market cap, which is roughly what that was for Biogen, we would have a stock price of $500. So again, rough approval, if this drug is approved, you would have a share price of around $500. Again, rough estimates, just kind of trying to do a comparison based on market cap. But that shows you the potential, right? That's 10x potential right there. And so I think that's why so many people find Cassava Sciences very interesting, is because this is a company that has very promising data. We'll go through the data, yet has a stock price that's $43 and has 10x potential. And I think you really don't see that in this late stage of a biotech company. Typically for a 10x potential in a biotech company, I feel like you're in those phase 1 or phase 2 trials, not actively dosing patients in the phase 3. And actively dosing patients in the phase 3 will come into play later. So I just want to, before I look specifically into the company, like I said, I think a few times, the company is very controversial right now. In essence, we can look at the stock price. There was a run up in anticipation of the 9-month data announcement at a conference over the summer. It was announced, and on the announcement, there was a sell the news event. It fell down. It started to build back up. And then right around here is when a citizen's petition was filed to the FDA. So most people probably don't know what that is. At the time, I didn't really know what it was. But basically, a law firm filed a petition stating that due to inaccuracies in Cassava Sciences preclinical data done by one of their doctors that they work with, Dr. Wang, they said that the trials for the drug should be halted. So when you file a citizen's petition, you have the FDA has a certain amount of days before they have to make a decision. So that deadline is coming up in mid-January. So that citizen's petition will be fully done and through the system by mid-January. Since then, multiple journals, multiple other citizens petitions have been created in favor and against Cassava Sciences. And some of the journals they published have questioned the data that was originally published. I think one thing, but I think one thing to notice about this is that the data that's been questioned so far has all been preclinical data, mainly circular around something called a Western blot. So a Western blot is a way to see clinical data, and it's a very very precise technique done in a lab, which is kind of at times hard to distinguish. So again, people are either side of this argument. Some people say that Cassava Sciences faked preclinical data to get funding and to move along in the process, and others are like, it was just a simple mistake by someone in the lab. I tend to lean towards the fact that, well, one, this is preclinical data and they've done clinical data now, but two, I tend to lean towards it was just a small mistake. So the company has had multiple rounds of NIH funding for both their proprietary drug and their proprietary blood test for Alzheimer's. And they also are dosing for their phase 3 trial. So in my opinion, specifically related to the citizens petition and the other short claims that have came out, I think that until a phase 3 trial is halted, I'm going to wait for the data and base my investment decisions based on the phase 2 data, because I believe the phase 3 data will come back positively and a new drug approval will be applied for and granted. So now, that's a very bold claim that I said that I believe personally that Cassava Sciences has what it takes to make it all the way. And so I want to kind of walk through that a little bit. The first thing I want to do is go through the company's financials. So the Cassava Sciences has one of the best company presentations I've seen in a lot of these companies. One thing I particularly like about the company is they update their presentation monthly. So even if they don't necessarily have that much to update, they're always updating it monthly, and it's listed on their website, which I really like because it's very easy to pull data because they present it in a form that's meant so that an average investor can easily read it. So specifically looking at their share counts, there are 40 million in outstanding shares, very high insider ownership, which is part of the reason I originally found the company. So the cash balance, 241.5 million, cash use, 30 million about per quarter, and they have no debt. So the company is, so phase 3 trials, it's very, very widely known that they are very expensive. The company has explicitly stated they believe the cash on hand will get them through the next 12 months, and that is when we believe the phase 3 trial should be done. So basically the company thinks the cash on hand should be enough to get them through their phase 3 trials, which is very good because with all the controversy around them, it'd be very difficult, number one, to raise money, but number two, it would be very difficult. It would look very bad to raise money because people are going to be questioning why you're raising money with all this controversy around you. So if we come back to just, the rest of the presentation, I'm just going to kind of walk through their presentation, explain kind of some of the things I like in it. This kind of goes through some of their things. I think one thing to notice, and I'll talk about this later, but their interim analysis of an open label study is kind of what their value is based on. And the thing is, some people question an open label study. And the reason for that is because there's no placebo control. So no one is getting a placebo dose of the drug to check to see how effective it is versus if it's just a placebo effect. Now, one thing I think that's important to note and why I believe the open label data is so valuable is because they have data for 9 and 12 months, which will later show they show cognitive improvement over that time, which anyone who knows Alzheimer's drugs knows that's unheard of. And the placebo group in other drug trials has been shown to go down over that period. So really, from my reading, nobody has been known to have a shown placebo effect of a year in an Alzheimer's drug or in Alzheimer's. So I think based on that, I feel very positively about the data at 12 months that it is very legit. So the specific lead researcher is Dr. Lindsay Burns, very interesting individual who's very accomplished. They went to very prestigious universities. So specifically, their theory is different than the typical Alzheimer's theory. And I think that's part of what leads to so much disagreement over the stock. Some people think that a small biotech company like Cassava Sciences, which was originally founded for the opioid crisis as Pain Therapeutics, how are they finding this novel treatment and a way to treat the drug? And I'm not one to question how they found it. They've explained how they found it. It was related to the research they were doing for opioids. But basically, they think that the current theory around how Alzheimer's work and how to fix it with medicine is wrong, or maybe not wrong, but it's not the best way to provide a solution to the drug. And I tend to agree with that, simply based on the fact that many drugs have been created with the amyloid clearing factor, which is basically to just clear inflammation. That's what Biogen's recent drug and many other drugs have tried to do, and many drugs have failed trying to do this exact thing. So I think it's a brilliant thing, whether or not this works, to try a new approach. And that's really what the company did. And basically, they're in simple terms, they're trying to fix the drug, or they're trying to fix something that they see in Alzheimer's patients, which is altered filament A, by fixing it upstream of where Alzheimer's is. So they're fixing an issue upstream that they believe fixes things down the stream, which eventually fixes the issue of Alzheimer's. And the beautiful thing about their drug is that it's an oral pill. So again, I keep comparing it to Biogen's drug, but Biogen's drug was the most recent approved drug in this field, and their drug is I believe an IV infused drug. So that's just much more work and difficult for someone to be able to take the drug, and is much more costly to give someone the drug. Their drug is just a simple pill, which is again incredible. So just going through this, I highly recommend looking at it, the company, and in these slides, I'm just going to briefly go over them and things I find particularly interesting. So the biggest thing is this. Basically, the summary of their phase 2 results is they had a whole panel of biomarkers they test for, and the whole panel went down in drugs, right? So basically, you can see that compared to where the placebo is, there's a noticeable difference in every single one across the board from Simufilm of the drugs they tested. And I think that's very important, because you can argue that they fudged a little preclinical data, which again, it would be a terrible controversy and very unethical. But I think it's very hard to argue that they changed the numbers in the biomarkers, considering that independent people across the country at many clinical sites participating in this drug trial are the ones taking this data. So I think a conspiracy, which I've not heard this conspiracy, but I think if you were trying to come up with a conspiracy that, they told everyone across the country at all their clinical sites and somehow manipulated the data, I think that's far-fetched. So that's why I feel like their phase 2 data we can look at with some legitimacy. And I think, it's pretty incredible. It shows across the board biomarkers changed. But at the end of the day, with Alzheimer's, we're not trying to fix biomarkers. We're trying to show an improvement in patient's life. And really that comes out to cognition. And that's really why I believe Cassava Sciences is such a revolutionary drug. If everything holds true and if they're approved, is because of later on, we'll see, this is based on their open label study. Again, you see the biomarkers very positive, but this is what the big thing is. They show improvement at 6, 9, and 12 months in cognition. To my understanding, I can feel free to correct me, but when this was first, when the company first published their 9 months trial results, no drug had ever shown cognitive improvement or had been published to prove cognitive improvement over 6 months in an Alzheimer's patient. The first one to show 6 months, again, to my understanding, was the current standard use care drug on the market, which was Aricept. But after 6 months, people stopped showing improvement. Now, Cassava Sciences, on the other hand, in their open label study, which again, I believe can be legitimate because nobody's shown a placebo effect in Alzheimer's patients of a year, has been shown to show cognitive improvement at 6, 9, and 12 months, which is, in my opinion, incredible to say the least. Being able to show cognitive improvement truly would change the patient's lives and would make this drug become one of the best-selling drugs of all time, in my opinion, because we haven't looked at the data right here, but there's about 40 million people in the US in the Alzheimer's market. With the aging population, that number is only expected to grow. If you think about other countries also, you have a very big market for Alzheimer's. The second thing is there's no great solution on the market right now. So if you're able to have, the best drug on the market, I think there's a lot of money to be made. And the other thing about Simufilm is it's not like a one-time fix. It's a consistently taken product. So over years, a person would take this potentially once they're 60 for the next 10, 15 years. They're going to be regularly taking this pill, which is just regularly driving in a revenue and profit to the company. Just to keep going, they look at Biogen's drug trial for their drug, and they showed that in their drug, the placebo was shown to decline. And so this is very important because if the placebo in general in other trials have been shown to decline, then that means that their drug, even if it's open label, will most likely, even if it's open label and shows improvement, that means the drug's working. And at the end of the day, we can't know for sure how well it works or if it works until the phase 3 trials. But I feel like we can go into the phase 3 trials very confident in the potential outcome. So one thing that they're going to do is a cognitive maintenance study that's upcoming, basically taking some of the people off to see if they then fall down, and then if they put them back on, if they would rise back in cognitive levels. A couple other things. This is a brief overview of the phase 3 trial. They have 2 phase 3 trials ongoing with different lengths. Again, within 12 months, my understanding is they are hoping to have at least one of the phase 3 trials done. Now, this right here, SAVA DX, is a very interesting thing. Most people really aren't talking about it much because it's very early on in the clinical stages. But the basic thing is altered filament A, which is Cassava Sciences' theory of how, of what causes Alzheimer's. So this test is a blood test that measures the amount of altered filament A. And now why this is huge is because right now the only real way to detect Alzheimer's is through a spinal tap, which is a very painful and expensive procedure. If the company can prove this SAVA DX, which is really basically, if they can prove this, then they're kind of also going to have to prove their drug. So they kind of go hand in hand. But they will have a blood test, which will be cheap and easily accessible when you just do a bunch of other blood tests to show whether or not you have Alzheimer's, which that's very beneficial to the patient because then they know whether or not they have Alzheimer's. But I think the more beneficial thing that I don't know if everyone here is thinking this, but they have a way to find more people to take the drug. And what I mean by that is if this becomes a regular staple every 5-10 years, in people 50 and older's blood tests, then you're just finding more and more people who have early onset Alzheimer's that are going to go onto your drug. And so this product right here is, I think, overlooked. It can add a lot of value to the company just by, one, helping people find out that has Alzheimer's, but two, if they're the best product on the market, then selling those people their product. So I think this product, again, I'm not going to go too in depth because it really is based around if the drug works or not, but it could be revolutionary as well. So we already talked over the financials. Cassava completely owns all the patents for the company. So I'm just going to, for full disclosure, I have a position in Cassava Sciences. And I believe it's my highest conviction play on the stock market right now. And not necessarily because I think it's the most likely to go up, but I think it's the best odds of any play on the market that I see. I see it as a calculated risk. Let's say that they did manipulate data. Then the company, if that happens and the FDA shuts down their trials, then the company will pretty much go under, or at least it's going to have a very hard time, and the stock price is going to tank. Now, on the other hand, if the drug is approved, you're looking at least, in my opinion, a 10 times potential stock. And for me, with a company this late in the clinical trials that has this positive of data, potentially revolutionary data, I think the risk is worth it to take, especially for me personally in my life stage. Now, if you don't feel comfortable playing in a very risky stock, I would not suggest investing in the stock. And if you are going to invest in the stock, I would look more in depth into the stock and the potential and the claims against and for the stock. And then I see it kind of as a lottery, a little bit of a lottery ticket stock, as big potential, but it could go down also. But that's where I like to invest, because in those opportunities, they're kind of hit or miss opportunities, but you can hit much bigger than you can miss, in my opinion. And if you diversify across 5-10 companies like this, then in the end, you're going to be looking at a pretty good outcome if you hit on a few of those. So I think this is a very interesting company. Again, there's a lot of controversy around it. It's a very interesting company that will, if things go well, will save many people a lot of hardship and help a lot of patients. Or it could potentially go and lose a lot of value very quickly if some of the allegations are proved true and the FDA stops the clinical data or clinical trials. As of now, they're currently dosing the clinical trials. So I feel like that's a very positive sign that the FDA does not want to end the trials. For me, I'm waiting till the phase 3 data, just like any other company. And I think the phase 3 data will shut people up one way or the other. It's either going to prove that the drug's effective, or it's going to prove that the drug doesn't do what it says. But in the end, science rules, and the data will tell the story for us. I want to thank you for watching my video, and thank you for Best of Us Investors for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and to be on their channel. Just a quick pitch for my page. Like I said, I write for Seeking Alpha. I really appreciate if you go check out my page, read some of my articles, give me a follow. I try to be very responsive to people if they direct message me on the site. And additionally, there's many other great resources on Seeking Alpha on lots of stocks, including Cassava Sciences, for and against Cassava Sciences. Thanks again, and I look forward to talking to you guys again.